and welcome back to the NWA 1983 project. I'm your host, Lex G, and with me, as always, is Matt Riley. How are you doing tonight, Matt?
Super.
Thanks for asking. So, guys, I was debating to myself if we should do this show. Now, this show is our Black History Month show, and to be serious for a minute here, I do find it kind of sad and a little disappointing that we still live in a world that's necessary to have a Black History Month. I understand why there's a Black History Month. Then should there be a Black History Month? Absolutely. But unfortunately, race relations, who I thought 10 years ago was much improved. I think over the last 10 years, we've learned that it hasn't improved as much as we thought it did. And it's really sad to see all around. And I think in terms of this show, I can talk about this personally. We've always given equal airtime, equal play to wrestlers who were great and some of them who weren't great, regardless of race, religion, sexual preference, or what have you. And I was debating to myself we talk about Junkyard Dog, and we talk about Ron Simmons, and we talk about Butch Reed all the time. We did a show on racism. We did a show on Sputnik Monroe, a big deal in terms of wrestling history, in terms of the civil rights movement. So I debated, if doing this show was a worthwhile endeavor or not. And we're gonna do the show because I feel that professional wrestling, although it is a form of entertainment that was built on stereotypes,
Right.
not only black stereotypes, but Russian stereotypes and German stereotypes and Irish stereotypes. They've done angles that are race baiting or gay baiting.
Yeah.
In the past, and in some cases, they still do it to this day. But professional wrestling is strangely progressive in other areas.
Yeah.
Now, some of you may agree with me and some of you may not, but I don't think there's a black wrestler out there that I can say with 100% clarity that deserved to be in a top spot or be a world champion that didn't get that opportunity. For every Butch Reed or Rocky Johnson that would have made a great NWA champion, you also had Roddy Pipers and Ted DiBiase's who didn't get those opportunities as well.
Right.
So I don't think for some of these wrestlers, regardless of their ethnic background, it just, there's only so many top spots out there. There's only so many guys that could be world champion. And there's plenty of guys, a laundry list of guys who may deserve an opportunity who didn't get it. And I don't think race played a part in that, although it may have. I can't say for sure. When it comes to racism from time to time, and I think I'm qualified, I guess, to say this since I am of Latin descent myself, Hispanic or what have you, a person of color, maybe. When it comes to racism, and when people say things, it's kind of hard to figure out the intent. Now, people may say it of an opinion, and to me, it might be racism. But again, I don't know. For the most part, some people it's easy to see how they feel in their heart. Is it just a controversial opinion? Is it an opinion based on their experiences? Is it an opinion based on it could be their experience based on a trillion things and not necessarily racism. And I think we live in a world right now where that word gets thrown around maybe a little too much. I don't know. But if someone who has experienced racism like myself, racism is funny. Because a lot of times it makes you punch at ghosts. It makes you see things that are not there. So, for me personally, have I not received a job opportunity because of the color of my skin? I can't say that I have. Can't say that I haven't either. Have I been discriminated against? At least in terms of organizationally or fundamentally? I can't say that I have as well. Because I don't know intent. So when you get in these situations, it's hard for me to say. I'm not 100% sure. I don't think that's the case. I don't think I've gotten jobs because they want to have a Hispanic in that role, and I was the best qualified Hispanic to get that role. Not just the best qualified person. I always figured I was the best qualified person for that position. I can't say that, me going out for job interviews that, I didn't get it because I was Hispanic or a person of color. I'll never know that. And I think that's that little bit of paranoia that I have is like, it makes you think twice. So it's always an interesting conversation to have. I don't want to get too serious on it. I don't want to get, too bogged down because this is supposed to be a fun show.
Yeah.
It is an interesting fact on that. So what I can say is this, in terms of professional wrestling, what we haven't seen is, black promoters. We haven't seen too many black bookers. Ernie Ladd was a booker, but we haven't seen too many in terms of the administration of professional wrestling. Again, I don't know what the WWE looks like in terms of race diversity, in terms of their hierarchy. I don't know if there's any black writers in there currently. I don't think that there's any black road agents currently, although I might be wrong. Obviously, I don't know what they look like in terms of their other divisions, whether it be marketing or their lawyers or what have you. So I'm not qualified to say. There was that good old Soul City Wrestling in Atlanta, which was, I believe, black-owned, who catered to a black audience, but I don't think they did really. New Jack came out of there. But there's been, obviously there's been Mexican promotions out there. There's been Japanese promotions out there. There's promotions in the UK, promotions in Germany, and what have you. So in terms of that professional wrestling, I think wrestling, although, the stereotypes, the negative stereotypes, have been progressive. You look at Pat Patterson, for example, a gay man, number 2 to Vince in terms of creative in the WWF. You have someone like Jim Barnett, who was a big power broker in professional wrestling, and he was openly gay. I guess when it comes down to professional wrestling, it's all about the green, brother. It's all about the green. So Matt, what are your thoughts?
I always kind of find it amusing because I'm growing up. When I first started watching wrestling, one of my favorite wrestlers, and to this day I still love the name, was Special Delivery Jones.
Yes.
And, when you first start watching, you don't know that guy is going to lose every time. Like, oh, this is the time Special Delivery Jones is going to win. And, of course, when you're a kid, you don't really know what's going on. And then after a while, you start figuring out, like, oh, man, he's going to get jobbed out. But I enjoyed him, And then, like, the Ron Simmons, we watched this right before we did the show. Yeah. We watched that match against Big Van Vader. I remember how exciting that was. And for me, it was less about him winning because of his, race or skin color, and more just I liked that he's going to beat Van Vader,
Ron Simmons is an interesting character all on its own because they didn't really bill him that way. He was built as the all-American Ron Simmons, the guy who came up from nothing, who became a football star in Florida State, and he was an all-American, and that's how they really built him.
Yeah.
He was managed by Dusty Rhodes for a little bit, too. They really kind of give him that push. He was a good promo, too. And I like the way they built him. He was built the right way. Not a stereotype. He wasn't crime time.
Right.
He was done really well. And for him to win the world championship and to be the first black heavyweight champion was a big deal in 1992. The crowd erupted. I like to think that they were cheering for Ron, not for Ron to make history. But people like when people make history. It is the draw. He didn't hold it for very long, but the fact that he did it and the crowd was so positive, like they could have booed him out of the building too. Think about that.
Yeah.
But we've never seen that in terms of wrestling, though. We've never seen a black man get booed out of the building as a babyface because he was black.
Right.
Maybe in parts of the countries that happened, but that's not been documented anywhere. In terms of my favorite, black wrestlers of all time, and I want to talk a little bit about Butch Reed. I love Butch Reed. I recently watched a best of Butch Reed video that I had on tape somewhere.
Did he make it for himself?
He might have sold it out of his trunk. But Butch was really good, and there was a time frame in the early '80s where I can definitely see him as the NWA champion. He was that good. His work was good. His promos were good. He was Hacksaw Butch Reed in a Mid-South. And sometimes he was a face, sometimes he was a heel. But, he had really good matches with, like, DiBiase and Junkyard Dog and Magnum TA. And he was having these world-class matches. And most people remember him either as in WWF as the Natural with the blonde hair, which is funny.
Yeah.
He was supposed to be Intercontinental Champion, but he no-showed the show.
Really?
Yeah.
Who was he going to beat?
Steamboat.
Wow.
And they had the shuffle, and they put the belt on Honky Tonk Man.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
So, he no-showed. Did it ever come up why he no-showed?
No. Although that is a myth. He looked like he was being programmed. I mean, if you watch the TVs, he was programmed. With Steamboat. I guess the reason why this myth is so prevalent is because he was programmed with Steamboat. He was having house show matches with Steamboat. And they put the belt on Honky Tonk Man literally out of nowhere. Like, Honky Tonk was coming off the feud with Jake Roberts. He hung around in WWF for a little bit, ended up in WCW, and then he was part of the tag team with Ron Simmons as Doom. And it's funny because they put masks on him, but him and Ron Simmons were only two black guys in promotion. So everyone knew who Doom was.
Well, I will tell you, growing up, one of our, like, local area street legends was if you were a black wrestler and you entered the WWF or NWA, you would either be feuding with another black wrestler or teaming up with them.
Yeah.
It was always the way. And we used to have this running gag about when we were like pretending to be wrestling in the backyard. It'd be like, Butch Reed, Koko Ware, headbutt challenge, and we go back and forth. Because remember, it was like, well, they have those enforced craniums. The what? Okay. But yeah, that Samoans versus like Tony Atlas or whatever, the headbutt challenge.
I once saw Jimmy Snuka and Haku give someone a double headbutt in a Royal Rumble, and I thought their head was going to explode. And I was disappointed that their head didn't fucking cave in. Fucking wrestling.
I went to a show expecting murder. Little do we know Jimmy Snuka got it done on the way in. Oh.
And Butch lasted WCW 91 and then kind of bounced around the indie circuit after that for a while. He did end up on a 2007 episode of SmackDown, hanging out with Teddy Long, who's going to be in the WWE Hall of Fame this year. So there you go. He's also involved with the class action lawsuit regarding brain injuries, so he's never going to be back in the WWE ever again. So, a bunch of wrestlers had a class action lawsuit against the WWF. They alleged that they incurred traumatic brain injuries. Like Raven's involved with that. A bunch of guys were involved with that, and they're probably not going to be welcome back in the WWE. But you never say never.
Oh.
But I like Butch Reed. He's awesome. Now, if you really want to get obscure a little bit, I love to mention him on the show.
That's it.
One of my favorite wrestlers.
Abdullah the Butcher?
We'll talk about him in a minute. Pork Chop Cash.
Yeah.
Now, Pork Chop Cash, 6'2", 265 pounds, debuted in 1973. Wrestled a lot, most of his time, in terms of his early career, in NWA Hollywood. But he's an awesome performer. Again, not the best Bell the Bell, but his look is awesome. Like, he looks amazing. And I recently saw a match he was in the WWF as a jobber. I'm like, how are they going to job out Pork Chop Cash? That's messed up. But he's fantastic. Guys, if you don't, you haven't heard of Pork Chop Cash, you haven't seen any of his work, he's awesome. We're talking about, like, he's super jacked. He's the boss. Oh, man, he was awesome. I mean, obviously, he had feuds with, like, Man Mountain Mike and Kurt Von Hess. Jerry Brown and Buddy Roberts. Had a little feud with Roddy Piper in Los Angeles. Former Georgia Tag Team Champion with Tom Jones. And they beat the Valiant Brothers.
The singer?
Not that Tom Jones.
Oh.
The other Tom Jones. The more important Tom Jones. And I guess the biggest moment is, and we'll talk about him too, teamed up with his boy, Ray Candy.
Ray Candy?
Yes.
Oh, no.
Also known, and probably better known as Kareem Muhammad. Part of one of the greatest tag teams of all time, the Zambui Express. And that was in a...
Zamboni Express?
Zambui Express.
Oh, Zambui.
Yes.
Oh.
He was part of Skandor Akbar's Devastation Incorporated.
Oh, yes. Skandor Akbar.
Ray Candy also trained New Jack. There you go. But the Zambui Express, they were awesome. I believe I saw them on a Battle of the Belts. But they were the first wrestlers to be, I guess, Nation of Islam or Muslim extremists, militant Muslims. Like the black, like basically Nation of Domination, but we're talking about the early 80s here. Jeez. Ray Canty was trained by Dory Funk Jr. and he could work a little bit. But, they wrestled in the CWA, feuding with the Fabulous Ones, and they were in the Crockett's. They were in Starrcade 84, where they wrestled Buzz Tyler in the Mass Assassin #1. Obviously, they spent some time in Puerto Rico. Fortunately, he passed away of a heart attack in 1990. So there you go. That's Pork Chop Cash and Ray Candy. So let's talk about Abby. I know you're a big Abby fan.
I am, although I always feel like, misunderstood.
Okay, how do you figure?
He just trying to help people eat a meal with a fork and gets, caught in the crossfire. And it's like, oh, man, Abdullah the Butcher. He was, for a long time, he was one of my group of friends as a kid, like just one of those random, in the cafeteria. Is it a fork? Just, we had a running gag. We were going to try to send him a spork in the mail.
Nice.
Him use a spork. Didn't happen.
Abby's interesting because he was he looks like a fucking monster.
Yeah.
Like if you ran into Abdullah by the dumpster at the 7-Eleven, you're gonna be scared. Scary looking dude. Again, not the best worker in the world, but he uses judo and karate. Spent most of his time, he spent most of his time in a lot of different places. He didn't stay in one place too long.
Yeah.
But, he was in Europe and the Caribbean, Australia, Africa. You've seen him in World Class and WCW and Jim Crockett Promotions and, lots of time in Japan. He was in movies in Japan. The guy was a star. He was a big star. And, he owns Abdullah the Butcher's House of Ribs and Chinese food, which, if I'm ever in Atlanta, I'm going to check it out. I met Abby in person. I got his autograph, and we took a picture together. So it's actually on the cover of my YouTube channel. You see me and Abby together. He's a fork in his mouth. Oh, bless his heart. My favorite Abdullah moment of all time. Cactus Jack and Van Hammer are having a Falls Count Anywhere match. And the brawl ends up in a stable. They're fighting. And all of a sudden, this black cowboy hits Van Hammer with a shovel. And it happens to be Abdullah the Butcher dressed as a cowboy.
Right.
Which is an awesome visual. Obviously, Cactus gets the 1, 2, 3. And then Abby proceeds to dump Missy Hyatt in a trough.
Not the first time.
No, it's not the first time. Apparently, Missy didn't know that was coming, and that was a rib.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Another favorite Abby moment.
I love how in wrestling, anytime you're a total fucking asshole to somebody, it's a rib.
It's just a rib.
Oh, I was just joking. You shit and cut my cat's head off, and then put it in a blender. Oh, I'm just kidding, man.
Mr. Fuji.
sensitive.
Yes. Another favorite moment of mine from Abdullah's run in WCW. There's two of them. Chamber of Horrors. You ever seen the Chamber of Horrors steel cage match?
Okay.
Abby gets put in an electric chair, and he's electrocuted and dies.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Who could forget that?
And the second one was from one of the Lethal Lottery battle bowls that they had. And two things happen, right? They have the Lethal Lottery, and Cactus Jack gets picked, and you know who his partner is? Buddy Lee Parker is his partner.
What?
Yeah. So Jack goes out to the ring, and Abby goes nuts and like beats the shit out of Buddy Lee Parker. And they do the thing where Buddy Lee Parker is crawling from the locker room to the ring. So he literally crawls the whole way down. And you know WCW had those long ramps, right?
Oh, yeah.
So he's crawling. When he finally makes it in the ring, he gets beat. Which is awesome. And then when Abby gets picked, he's teamed up with Sting. Now, Abdullah and Cactus have been feuding with Sting. And so Abby comes out all excited and shit. And it's like, Sting, me and you, we're going to tag. We're going to kick some butt. And then he proceeds to attack Sting. And it's hilarious. You have to check it out. I think that's, it's either 90 or 91. I think it's probably 91. But it's so funny. It is so funny. And, after he never had a run in WWF. He may have had a run in the WWF, but he didn't have a run in the WWF.
Right.
And there's issues now with him with the hepatitis shit and all that other stuff. And obviously he's 100 years old and he's not fucking working. But Abby was definitely an interesting dude.
Yeah.
I do want to talk about the Big Cat, Ernie Ladd. Ernie Ladd. Sitting underneath the learning tree with Ernie Ladd. Now, Ernie Ladd was one of the, I guess you would say he was one of the first to make the transition from pro football to professional wrestling. Not the first, but one of the first. He played with the Kansas City Chiefs and the Houston Oilers. And he says that he was the most promoted black man a year before Cassius Clay won the World Heavyweight Championship. That's what he claims.
Wow.
I don't know if that's true or not. But he was a big deal in terms of football. He's 6'9", 315 pounds, has an 18D shoe, 52-inch chest, 39-inch waist, 20-inch biceps, 19-inch neck. The guy was a giant, a legitimate giant.
Yep.
And he was a pretty good worker. As a heel, he was just to the point where he would cause riots with his promos, and he was amazing. Spent some time in the WWF, where he was managed by the Grand Wizard of Wrestling. He feuded with Andre the Giant, of course, and he would call Andre the Giant Andre the Dummy, or the big fat French fry, which is awesome. But he was the first, he was a character, man. He was awesome. Basically, when his career, was winding down, he went to work for Bill Watts, and it was actually his booker. So he was the first black booker in professional wrestling.
Wow.
So it was a big deal. He was also a color commentator for the WWF 1986. Some of you may remember him doing commentary on WrestleMania 2 with the Battle Royal with the NFL players. And then he called the big events at the CNE Stadium in Toronto. He was inducted in the Hall of Fame in 1995. And the Big Cat was longtime friends of the Bush family.
Oh, wow, I didn't know that.
Well, the President Bush, the first one, big wrestling fan, and he was really good friends with Paul Bosch, promoter of Houston Wrestling. He actually went, in World War II. They met in World War II, and they, served in the same, platoon or whatever. So Paul Bosch and George Bush were big time friends. Plus, he loved wrestling. There's a lot of presidents who loved or been involved with professional wrestling. Obviously, everyone knows about Trump's affiliation with professional wrestling. President
Right.
Trump's affiliation with professional wrestling. But it goes deeper than that. Richard Nixon, big fan. Jimmy Carter, he was friends with Jim Barnett. So it goes back a lot of different presidents who were big wrestling fans, which is interesting because wrestling tends to be known for appealing to the lowest common denominator. I guess would be the appropriate way to say that. Which you have to do to, I guess, to have a broad audience and that broad appeal. But yeah, Big Cat Ernie Ladd. So Matt, what are your thoughts on the Big Cat Ernie Ladd?
Well, I will tell you, I had a couple of videos of old, wrestling footage, and he's one of those guys that looping punch. I kind of make fun of sometimes.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was I think it was cool, and watching him do a tackle or spear is fun to see too.
Yeah, we kill guys.
Yeah.
Yeah, big time. So next up, I want to talk about the Soul Man, Rocky Johnson. Now, I won't go out and meet Rocky Johnson next month, so I'm excited to meet him, get an autograph and a picture with him. That's gonna
You sucker punch him?
No, but I'm not gonna be one of those jerks like, I think your son is awesome, because I think those guys are jerks.
Oh.
So Rocky Johnson, Canadian-born, by the way, was a big star in whatever territory he was in. Would it be Memphis or the WWF? Wherever promotion he was in, and apparently he was sparring partners with both Muhammad Ali and George Foreman.
Wow.
Yeah. So there you go. Those stories tend to be exaggerated sometimes. But again, going back and watching Rocky Johnson's work, he could have totally been NWA champion as well. Good charisma, pretty good in the ring, good enough. Would have the cool punches and super athletic, so he had really good matches with Harley Race and Terry Funk. So I think overall, great performer. Obviously, everyone knows who his son is. The son is The Rock. Don't be a dummy. You should know that. He trained The Rock along with Pat Patterson. I know Tom Pritchard was involved with that as well. Made a WrestleMania appearance at WrestleMania 13. He did a run-in when the Sultan and the Iron Sheik attacked The Rock, so there you go. Surprised he wasn't at WrestleMania 1 because him and Tony Atlas were on the roster at the time. So I was surprised not to see them at WrestleMania 1. Instead, we had the Mass Executioner, Matt Bourne, instead. So there you go. Man, that made no sense. So what are your thoughts on Rocky Johnson?
I liked him. I think he was underutilized. I don't know if he got an injury or something like that happened or what it was. But sometimes you wonder, looking back, what happened to this guy? He had so much talent. What happened?
Right.
Did he Butch Reed blow off a show or something else happen?
I don't think anything necessarily happened. You just obviously he had the connection with the Samoans, and he just spent a lot of time in Hawaii and stuff. And he would hop around from promotion to promotion, but he was always used well. Obviously, he would be feuding with the top guy, or he'd be in a tag team with Tony Atlas, doing cool stuff or whatever. One half of the World Tag Team Champions. So he was used pretty well. Now, did he break through to be a top guy? No. Are you really gonna put him over Ric Flair or Hulk Hogan or maybe Bob Backlund? But he wasn't gonna get over those guys. But big fan of Rocky Johnson. I think he's fantastic. And then talk about Rocky Johnson. You talk about Tony Atlas. What are your thoughts on Tony Atlas?
I met him a few times up here in the circuit. I always felt bad because he was one of those guys you just needed the money, and it was like, oh man, you're Tony Atlas, and I think I know he had some problems along the way, but he was one of those guys that was, physique wise, holy crap.
Yeah. I mean, here's that famous picture of he's press slamming Hulk Hogan. He put Hulk Hogan over his head.
Wow.
Yeah, and this is when Hogan was 320. So legitimately strong. I think his best work was probably in Mid-South. He was doing some really good stuff in Mid-South. His WWF stuff was okay, both the first and second run. Didn't like when he was Saba Simba, though.
No.
And it's funny because so Roddy Piper's doing commentary, and he comes out as Samba Simba, and he's like, "That's not Samba Simba. That's just Tony Atlas." He kind of killed the gimmick. But anyone that's in the know that knew that was fucking Tony Atlas. Black Superman. There you go.
Right.
Yeah. Did some really good stuff in Puerto Rico. He was actually there the day that Brody was killed. We did a show about Brody's death, so we're not gonna get into it too much. But he was there, and we basically brought Brody to the hospital. Super sweetheart guy. He did have a run in 2008 when he returned to the WWE, and he managed Mark Henry for a little bit, and
I remember that.
yeah, he was a sidekick on the Abraham Washington show, which no one remembers.
Oh, right, yeah.
No one really remembers
He's
that.
always laughing randomly, whatever.
Yeah.
I remember that now.
Yeah. Do you think? Let me ask you a question.
Oh.
If Hulk Hogan didn't come to the WWF, you think Vince would have put the belt on Tony Atlas?
Ooh. I don't know. Maybe.
Big jacked
USA
up.
Tony Atlas.
Mr. USA, a big deal. Very similar. Obviously, he couldn't cut the promo as Hogan. Didn't have the charisma, but he definitely had the look. And if you look at the roster in 80, 83, 84, along with... He's probably the guy. He's probably the guy. Unless you can put the belt on Slaughter. You wouldn't get Steamboat for another year. You were going to turn Mr. Wonderful babyface. Not putting the belt on Piper, at least at that point. So I think Tony Atlas probably would have been the viable replacement. Again, this is WWF, so work rate wasn't that big of a fucking deal. But it goes into the reason, and I don't know, some of you may know this, and some of you may not know this. The reason they wanted to put the belt on Backlund was because Vince wanted the All-American Boy. I'm talking about Vince Sr.
Right.
The reason he wanted the All-American Boy was he was frustrated and didn't want to go through the riots that they would have when Bruno would lose or when Pedro would lose.
Really?
Because the WWF was, they used ethnic superstars because obviously they had Bruno. And you had the Italian population. Every time fucking Bruno... And it wasn't just the Italian population. It was anyone that was in there. When Bruno fucking lost, they fucking would riot. And try to kill the fucking heel. That's why when he did lose, they had to do it in kind of weird places.
Right.
The same thing happened with fucking Pedro Morales. When Pedro Morales would lose, the Puerto Ricans would come out and fucking riot. So Vince being tired of that shit was like... I need the All-American Boy. So originally, they tried to pitch him. Eddie Graham tried to pitch him on Steve Keirn, but then he went with Backlund instead. And trust me, when Backlund lost, no one fucking rioted.
Yeah.
But I wonder if they didn't put the belt on Tony Atlas because they were afraid if Tony would lose, they would fucking riot.
Maybe.
That could have been a possibility. So. Oh, but yeah, I mean Tony Atlas. You want to talk about fucking guys that had good physiques, and we're talking about the 70s and 80s here. There's not a better looking body than fucking Tony Atlas. Do you have anyone that you want to talk about specifically?
Well, I think Rocky King's underrated. Rocky King had a brief run as a member of the Freebirds.
Rocky King did have he's a fucking jobber.
Yes, but I will say this. I was a fan of Iceman Parsons.
Yes, the Iceman, King Parsons.
Yep. And I know he wasn't...
Iceman King Parsons, do you know he was trained with Tom Pritchard?
No.
In the same class.
I just remember in school everyone started doing the booty blast and killing each other.
Yeah. Booty blast. So, Iceman King Parsons, whose real name is King Parsons. What a name. That's a good name for wrestling.
Wow.
Yeah. Iceman started out in Houston, Texas, working for Paul Bosch. And he ended up going over to Portland, where he won the tag team championship with Rocky Johnson. Spent some time in Jim Crockett Promotion, where he teamed with Pork Chop Cash. And he feuded with the most underrated wrestler in the history of wrestling, Don Cornudle. I'm the biggest Don Cornudle fan, along with Private Jim Nelson, who is Boris Zukov, for those of you who don't know. But you remember, my favorite Iceman King Parsons feud was with Buddy Roberts. And you remember he put the fucking Freebird hair cream on Buddy Roberts?
Yeah.
And Buddy was bald, and then he had the wig deal, and they would pull off the fucking wig. It's fucking awesome. Formed a tag team with another wrestler that we should talk about more. Rock and Roll Buck Zumhofe.
Oh, I don't know if we should.
Is it because he's in jail for, like, rape?
Yeah, that's part of it, yeah.
He came to the ring with the boombox. That's all I have to say. Oh, fucking. I love the Iceman. Iceman's awesome. What are your thoughts on Bad News Allen, or as most people know him, Bad News Brown?
I liked him. I like the fact he stood up to Andre the Giant.
Yeah.
But
then Andre shot him, though. You know, heard that? In Japan, he fucking shit on him.
What?
Like, yeah, he fucking pooped on Bad News Brown in Japan.
In the ring?
In the ring.
What?
Yeah, true story.
Did he make extra money for that?
Probably. It's Japan, so probably not.
Yeah.
But I bet you they fucking sold bags of shit. People paid for it. Now, I say that in jest, but in Japan, there were vending machines with used panties in them. So there you go.
Yep.
So Bad News Brown, he won several medals in international competitions for the United States. He also was a heavyweight bronze medalist at the 1976 Summer Olympics. He was trained by Stu Hart. But everyone remembers Bad News Brown. Everyone remembers Bad News Brown for accusing Miss Elizabeth of giving sexual favors to Jack Tunney.
Oh.
So he wouldn't give Bad News a title shot. That's pretty risque for 1989.
Yeah.
He feuded with Hogan and with Savage. Again, they didn't lead. He didn't lead anywhere in terms of a pay-per-view match, but there's only 4 pay-per-views a year at that point. He did have the match with Jake Roberts, where it was the Damien versus the Box of Silver Rats, which was awesome.
Jesus.
And I saw him. They did a fucking promo where fucking Bad News had the fucking sewer rat, and like you actually saw the sewer rats, and he had them in his fucking hand, like by the tail, and he had a garbage can, and he's like, "Oh, this one's too small," and he threw it in the fucking garbage can. Like, "Oh, this one's good size," he put it in the box. So he didn't feed the sewer rats, and he was going to feed Damien to the rats, and that match ended in a double disqualification. He also had that match with Roddy Piper at WrestleMania 6. That was the match where Roddy Piper paid himself half black.
Oh, right.
So there you go. Also, Bad News Brown was in the early ladder matches with Bret Hart and Stampede. So they innovated the ladder matches.
Wow.
Yeah. Because they were doing ladder matches in the early 80s. What do you think about his gimmick, though? He once went on Arsenio Hall and claimed that he was going to be the first black heavyweight champion. Like, that's pretty edgy shit for 1989 WWF.
Yeah, I was.
He would call people beer belly sharecroppers, and I'm not sure if there were sharecroppers in 1989. Well, what are you gonna do? He was awesome. Good promo. He could have been world champion. I think. Like he could have beat. No, they could have both put the belt on him for a little bit, just to have him get beat by Savage or Hogan.
Yeah.
For a little bit. He would have been awesome.
He'd have been fun.
Yeah. He was a militant black dude in the vein of the Nation and Domination.
Right.
So,
Before the Nation of Domination.
yeah, imagine if he teamed up with Ron Simmons. So next up, I want to talk about Thunderbolt Patterson.
Thunderbolt Patterson.
Yeah, the guy who tried to start a union in wrestling and then was blackballed for a while.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Oh no.
Yeah. Spent a lot of time over in Florida. Feuding with Jose Lothario. He was feuding with Jose Lothario and Florida for a while. He picked the wrong side of the Georgia Championship Wrestling War, and lost that. But his big thing, he really wanted to form a union for the wrestlers, and he was blacklisted for it.
I'll tell you, if they wanted to do it these days, it could be done.
Yeah.
But the way to do it, I've always felt, is unionize as stunt professionals. Because that's what you're doing. Stunt work, televised stunt work.
Well, could they go underneath the Actors Guild at this point?
Yeah, sure.
Because Jesse's in the Actors Guild at this point. Although I didn't need credits or some shit, too, so. But Thunderbolt Patterson teamed up with Ole Anderson and they won the National Tag Team Championship, so. That's how they introduced Arn Anderson, is when Ole turned on Patterson. His last match was in 1993 at Slam Arena 93 for WCW, where he teamed with Brad Armstrong to defeat Ivan Koloff and Dan Lemowski. And he would mentor Ice Train until retiring in 1994. But yeah, he was fantastic. Good fucking promo. His work was okay, but good fucking promo. It was awesome. Still alive too.
Not for long. Oh no.
They said, a lot of people said that Thunderbolt Patterson did not become NWA champion because he was too outspoken and too controversial. So
Was he considered uppity?
could have been, but that's what some people claim. So,
Oh.
but right now he's a labor organizer for the Service Employees International Union in Atlanta, and he runs a Christian camp for kids. He's also an ordained minister now.
Some pork chop cash to see him.
Well, if you want to talk about again, one of my favorites, you got to talk about Rufus R. Jones, the Freight Train.
Oh.
Yeah. Now we talked about Rufus R. before. Again, he's the famous son, the Slickster.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh. Did not know that.
Yeah. So the Doctor of Style Slick is Rufus R. Jones' son. Some people say that Dusty Rhodes stole his shtick from Rufus R. Jones. Some people say he stole it from Thunderbolt Patterson. And some people like to talk shit. So there you go. But you can definitely see it. Watch Thunderbolt matches, watch Rufus R. Jones matches. So you'll see what I'm talking about. Some of those are. What about your friend, the Junkyard Dog, Grab Them Cakes? Someone that we talk about constantly on the NWA project.
Oh, I enjoyed Junkyard Dog a lot.
Yeah.
I think he should have got a good, significant run.
He was unreliable, though. That cocaine, man, that's a hell of a fucking weapon.
Oh, is that what it was?
Yeah, man.
Oh, Junkyard Dog.
He was like, you would just get lost. He's like, I'm going to the hood. I'll be back later. And you go and get high somewhere. Oh.
That sucks.
Good promo, good size, good physique. Could work a little bit. Again, it wasn't the best, the best worker. He wasn't going to be doing chain wrestling. But no, he was over every time he went. When he became, he's Big Daddy Ritter and Stampede, and then we became the Junkyard Dog with the music, when no one bites the dust.
Right.
Boom.
That was it.
They did that Who Dat, and Louis. That's where it started, from what I understand. The Who Dat in
Really?
yeah, New Orleans. Like who that gonna beat that dog? That's what they say. I wasn't in New Orleans in 1982, so I don't know for sure. All right, guys. So we are officially running out of time. So, again, our next show will be our closed circuit events live from the Cow Palace. We'll be talking about San Francisco wrestling. Main event of that show will be Harley Race taking on Antonio Inoki. We'll see if Harley Race is able to regain the NWA World Championship. So, real excited about that. And then after that, we're going to have another cornucopia show, like I could call them, highlight show, a best of the NWA, and then we'll go right into the Last Stampede. Lots of exciting things coming up for the NWA 1983 project. So, for Matt Riley, I'm Lex G. Have a good night.